But here you have a system which consists of 10 to the 23 Avogadro number of objects. And they can have dislocation, I can have imperfect and impurities, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, I think to be so sternly demanding, this is the question of the double standard. If you ask the people doing in the labs of solid state physics, I mean, the cuisine there, the repeatability of this thing is almost zero. In the end, they learn how to do it. But then, of course, this is done within a well-established, you know, Nobel Prize-led kind of labs, so everything is fine. So you come up, Fleischmann and Pons, you come up with a new concept, totally new concept, in a complicated thing. It's absolutely amazing the whole thing works. It's amazing that this thing, in fact, has continued to work. And now you're asking just at the beginning of a field where a few courageous persons have been, you know, you really require guts to stand the ridicule, the contempt, and other things that we have experienced. All of a sudden, my class is very brilliant, you know. If you just look at my curriculum, you see that it's a brilliant career. All of a sudden, I find myself an idiot in this community. How can that possibly be? Okay? But this happens. Now, fortunately, they don't use stakes anymore. Because I could even run that risk. Okay? I want you people to understand that we are really in a very serious situation. Science has become totally Aristotelian just because big science cannot tolerate an abrupt change of the paradigm, because all the value system, all the money system is based upon it. And we have to face this. Now, the taxpayer, who has nothing to do with this minority of Brahmins who dominate everything, has to understand that science, in order to be useful, must be for the people, not for its own furthering. And this is told you, I mean, he's a scientist who has lived through it and who has dedicated all his life to it, and is you know, is sincerely concerned about. I couldn't believe, you know, when I was a kid and coming up, you know, in a very well screened environment, you know, you are brilliant, so you're going to make a career. I could never believe that as soon as I gained conscience that something ought to be changed, I would be dropped so violently. And without any, you know, this way. I could never believe this to happen to me. This has happened to me, in a way. Fortunately, then I got to get tenure in the Italian system very early. In the Italian system, now I have the degree which is almost that of an ambassador, because I am a civil servant. I have no boss, so I can go on. But they will kill my students. They will not give them position. That is what they are now doing now. So they cannot do anything to me, but certainly they are going to subtract from me the audience of the young people just by making, you know, a career blackmail. And they're doing it.
I want to confirm that it not only happens in Italy.
Well,
I won't use the professor's name, but it's obvious. A professor well known for following cold fusion at MIT has had students who wanted to work on cold fusion told by certain members of the physics community there that their careers would be ruined if they go over and work on this. Okay? Ron Parker, the head of the MIT Plasma Fusion Center, who has got an experiment that charitably I will call grossly incompetent, onto which fraud was imposed. Okay? And if anyone wants to read the letter of Dr. Charles McCutcheon of the NIH, okay, who is not a believer in cold fusion at all, he sent a letter to President Best of MIT stating how outrageous that experiment was, and how things have to be done, and how it has to be, in effect, retracted or modified, because it's grossly incompetent and fraudulent, likely. Okay? That man said in Science of Peter Hagelstein, he said, and this was in the spring of '89, he said, I think it was the spring of '89, or maybe it was, no, it was December of '89, something like that. He said, in principle, he had no problem with Peter continuing work on cold fusion theory, but it calls into question his judgment. Okay. That anyone should be so insane as to work on this, when we all know that the MIT data, there it is, focus in on it, showed, the published data shows that there's no difference between heavy water and light water. But 3 days before, there definitely was a difference. Now, I don't say that proves cold fusion. In fact, it certainly doesn't prove cold fusion. But to put this forth to the world as a negative is disgusting and outrageous, and the way it's being continued is even worse. Here's the unbiased view. The person who doesn't care, he cares whether cold fusion is real or not. He wants to know, Dr. Charles McCutcheon. But he says this is what he wants best to do, which I don't think he will do. I think they're conducting a secret investigation of this, which they won't even admit. It's fascinating the way they haven't learned the lesson from the Baltimore affair. For it, this is quoting McCutcheon. It's a public letter. He said I could release this to anyone. For its own good and to restore some civility to a contentious field, MIT should look into 1, how its scientists came to perform and publish such a poor experiment. That's an understatement. 2, why they either misdescribed their results, making them seem more meaningful than they were, or used a subtle correcting procedure without describing exactly what it was. 3, how it came about that data from calorimeters with a claimed sensitivity of 40 milliwatts converged between drafts after completion of the experiments to within perhaps 5 milliwatts of the result that hot fusion people would prefer to see. It might have been chance, but it might not have. And in fact, my friends, another scientist interested in cold fusion, whose name is Dr. Mitchell Schwartz, who has 4 degrees from MIT, has a paper which he will publish, and which I can show you the color graphs from. I'm not at liberty to show you the paper. He uses polite language, but I, in my letter to Vest, interpreting his paper, say that this is now clear evidence of scientific fraud. This paper, with its graphs, shows that there is no way that you can get. Here's the thing. Here's the light water, heavy water. Day 1, the unpublished. Day 2, published. You can go from here to here with a simple known transformation. You can't go from there to there by any linear transformation. There are added data points, 20% more. These 2 points have been added. They were calibration ticks. Come on. We know what that message is. The message was, in 1989, get rid of this. And they had been assaulting and attacking Pons and Fleischmann on their alleged shift of data, which is rather ironic, because they look in the mirror and they should see what they did themselves.
They knew what they're talking about.
Right, they knew what they were talking about. Yes.
Who do you believe is behind the opposition to cold fusion?
I don't think there's a conspiracy. I think there are, I said, there are 2 things. Arrogance and vested interests, okay? The arrogance is from those, well, look, I listened to what Parker and Ballinger said on tape. You know what they said in their attempt to plant a story in the Boston Herald to attack Pons and Fleischmann, which they then, when they saw the exact details of their words on the front page, they almost got a reporter fired. Do you know that Nick Tate of the Boston Herald could have been fired? And he said to my class, I probably would have been fired if I had not had that tape. He said, and Ballinger said, of course we know where all the good scientists are. They're in Utah, right? Ha 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 ha. That's what they said on the tape. Well, they were arrogant, and they still are arrogant. Like Hermann Feshbach, the expert on nuclear physics, who won't open an article and look at it because he thinks he doesn't need to see any more evidence. His own society published this.
This is very similar to that, to get back to the Galileo affair.